But I believe that we can, this year, with the help of people in this room and beyond, see genuine success. And one of the reasons for that is that there has been, I believe, not just in the UK, but across the world politically, a realization of the scale of the challenge and the urgency for acting. We've all seen, as a result of the advocacy, and again, inevitably I'm going to have to mention figures like David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg, but more than that, the advocacy of grassroots political movements, the growth of awareness of the impact of climate change, the Australian wildfires, our recent own, closer to home, climate events, which have been increasingly evidence of a planet which is going through a profound change. These changes close at home, this advocacy on the streets, this realization in political chambers and political parties that anxiety, anger, and a determination for change are developing. This, I believe, creates the right political framework for action. So you have a UK Conservative government working with a Scottish nationalist Scottish government, and whatever their other differences, a determination to make this a success. And we hope that we will also see, even as we've left the European Union, a close collaboration with European countries in order to achieve the diplomatic success and breakthroughs that we need. And that is why we're so pleased that this is a joint presidency with Italy, and why I'm so pleased that when we had the formal launch of COP26 and the Year of Climate Action last week, that Prime Minister Conte joined Prime Minister Johnson in order to issue a call to action. Now, it's also the case that we will need, exactly as Sean said, to engage not just political leaders at a national level, but at a regional or a state or a city level as well. I shan't mention any politicians by name in a critical fashion. However, it's important in the United States and in Brazil that we recognise that there will be people at the state and at the city level who can play a vital role in driving the change that we all need to see. It's also the case that there will be some nations that will play a critical role who in the past perhaps have been reluctant to acknowledge how critical and central their role is. So one of the things that we will be doing is engaging with, again, I don't want to make any criticisms of any nations, but some nations which are growing fast and which have been large emitters in order to ensure that they appreciate the need for change. And in that spirit, and in that broad spirit, I think it's incredibly exciting and appropriate that China is also hosting a conference of parties on biodiversity later this year as well. And that takes me to what it is that we hope that this COP overall will seek to achieve. Well, there's a political alliance coming together, but it's also the case that that political alliance needs to be focused on certain key criteria. The first thing is, we in the UK, and I know that this is the theme of the conference today, need to show that we are demonstrating a real leadership on this question. There's a natural tendency on the part of politicians to say, look at our record, look at how brilliantly we've done, we're world leaders in this and we're pace setters in that. And it is the case, and you will have UK politicians on behalf of this government and indeed predecessor governments lauding the Climate Change Act, which incidentally the European Commission said set the gold standard in climate action just a few weeks ago. You will also have UK politicians pointing to the fact that we've managed to dramatically increase our reliance on renewables, to reduce our reliance on coal, and at the same time to generate a level of economic growth which has defied some of the sceptics and doubters who wondered whether or not this action was right in the first place. But even as we do celebrate what we've achieved, be in no doubt the government recognises that there is so much more that we need to do in order genuinely to demonstrate leadership. It is not enough to look at the trajectory in the past. We have to be even more ambitious in the future. And in particular, you will have noted last week our determination to move ahead with the Road to Zero proposals, which will see the phasing out of the internal combustion engine on UK roads by making sure that no new internal combustion engine cars are sold from 2035 onwards, a 5-year sort of drawing forward of the deadline, in line with the recommendations of Lord Deben on how, as a country, we could reach net zero. Now, there are other initiatives that during the course of this year, my cabinet colleagues will be announcing, which will demonstrate Britain's commitment to ensuring that not just in transport, but in energy generation, in areas like construction and house building, in some of the high energy intensive industries, that we are serious about transformation. And one of the reasons why we believe it's so important to demonstrate this leadership is not just because we're hosting COP, but also because we believe that the UK has a moral responsibility to lead here. As the first country in the world to industrialise, and as we all know, industrialisation and the Industrial Revolution relied, and still relies disproportionately, on the extraction and the use of hydrocarbons, we have a moral responsibility on the first in, first out basis to ensure that the country that pioneered the Industrial Revolution, and therefore played the biggest role actually in powering the change in our climate that hydrocarbon extraction and burning has generated, we have a responsibility to lead a green industrial revolution as well, in order to show that we acknowledge our responsibility, our debt to the planet and our debt to others. And that takes me to another important theme of any COP. It's not enough just for this country to show leadership in that sense. There are other ways in which we need to show leadership as well. One of them is that we need to recognise the loss and damage inflicted on small island developing states and other developing nations as a result of climate events that have already occurred. So we need to find a way of making sure not just that there is a just transition for developing nations, but also that there is appropriate recognition of the damage that has already been endured by peoples and nations who are not at the same stage in the cycle of economic development. We also need to make sure that, as well as all countries recognising that movement towards reducing the increase in the Earth's temperature has to be accepted by all, we also need to ensure that, as well as nations recognising that their NDCs need to be sharper, better defined, more realistically delivered, we also need to make sure that adaptation and resilience are at the heart of everything that we do as well. And again, that involves a compact between wealthier nations and poorer nations. And again, I think that has to be one of the themes of our COP. It's also the case that we want to lead in demonstrating that nature-based solutions are a critical part of achieving the transformation that we want to see. So everything from changing the way in which in the UK we fund and support agriculture and land use, through to recognising that, as I mentioned earlier, China's biodiversity COP and our climate change COP are two halves of the same process. That is going to be central to the success of COP26 as well. And another thing, we also need to change the way in which the world's financial services and financial flows work as well. How can we encourage people to move from what one might call brown assets to green assets? How can we encourage people to recognise that there are ways in which investment should be moving from the industries and the extractive economics of the past towards those industries and those technologies that will help shape and determine a better future? It's already the case that one can see how pension funds and insurance players are changing the way in which they calculate where money should go. But there is more that needs to be done, and that's some of the work that Mark Carney and others will do. But again, in the same way as the UK led the Industrial Revolution, and now we should lead the Green Industrial Revolution, in the same way as the UK led an agricultural revolution, and now we can show how nature-based solutions can play a part. Similarly, the UK and London, as one of the world's principal financial centres, can also play a role in helping to re-engineer finance in order to serve these broader goals. Now, I just wanted to mention two other things as well. The COP process relies on collaboration It relies on an element of, what's the word? Nudge. That nudge comes from below, as I mentioned earlier, through citizen action and through democratic pressure. And one of the things that I believe that we should do with this COP is we should also make it the most transparent COP ever. We should invite citizens in. Of course, there are going to be questions about security and the particular position of some world leaders. Of course, that needs to be respected. But there is no reason why we can't have live streaming of the conversations that take place. And in so doing, we can better hold to account all the political and other leaders who are there. If they say one thing on the steps of the conference hall and another thing in private session, then that can and has frustrated progress in the past. By making the conference more transparent, I believe that we can achieve a greater level of progress than might otherwise be the case. And one other thing which I do want to mention as well, and that is technology. It can sometimes be the case that when some people talk about the need to tackle climate change, they talk in a way which suggests that technology will create some sort of Harry Potter wand or some Doctor Who sonic screwdriver that will magically absolve us all of difficult choices in the future. I certainly don't believe that, but I do believe that it is by setting stretching but achievable goals that we can engineer the technological and scientific changes necessary in order to enable us to meet our requirements. So, it is the case we're already seeing, as I mentioned earlier, a transformation in road transport. And it will be the case that where the UK leads, others, and indeed Norway for that matter, others will follow. We will see a transformation of road transport as we move towards electric vehicles. It's going to be more difficult and scientifically more testing to make that transition when it comes to aviation, but it will and can be done. And one of the lessons of an observation of how government works is that when government does, and when governments collaborate in setting particular goals and targets that we know are achievable, but necessarily involve that degree of stretch and innovation, we succeed in securing those changes, provided there is the political will and leadership, the popular demand, and also the sense of shared collective endeavour that these are the changes that we need to make. So I hope I've given you a flavour of some of the themes that we want to put at the heart of COP, but of course, the responsibility for making sure that it is a success will fall on whoever is going to take over from my friend Claire Perry-O'Neill as president, and I, like everyone here, will have to wait a few more days before that announcement is made. Thank you all very much. Thank you.